On air, okay. The graphic, okay. So we're gonna play the video and then we get started, right? Okay.
Are we live right now? No, okay. Sure, okay. Yeah. Hey everyone, how's everyone doing tonight?
They were all attacking the snacks and the drinks.
Yeah, sorry I'm late.
Okay.
Has everyone seen my workout here at Lake Nona? It's because of Juan.
That's because of you.
This is my little sizzle reel.
Welcome to Three Thoughts Song. Welcome back. Thank you, those of you who are still here from the previous conversation. Those of you who are live online, thank you for being here with us. Today we have Jefre as my guest here. Thank you for being here. How are you doing today?
Thanks, Raphael. Thanks. Honestly, I'm tired. It's been just a whirlwind. I literally rolled in with a suitcase, just sat down, and honored to be here today to speak to you in my hometown of Lake Nona.
Fantastic, fantastic. So I know who you are. A lot of people in the audience know who you are, but for those online who don't, can you tell us a little bit about you and how did you end up becoming this icon you are today?
Well, I guess really short story, really quick. I was a 9-to-5er doing still design, urban design and planning in Chicago for a big firm called SOM. Actually working on as-built for for a rail yard that then is now Millennia Park in Chicago. Mm-hmm. Had a heart attack at 35, triple bypass surgery, cashed out my 401k, and decided to not go back to art school. I just said I'm going to do these competitions that were around the nation called 1% for Art, which 15 years ago just started where cities were actually funding art through 1% of capital projects. So when you would go to an airport or a city hall or arena, all the artwork that you see there is through this 1% for Art. And so 200-300 people apply. It's a design competition. I was a finalist on 12 in my first year. You wish to win one. I won 8 in my first year.
Wow.
And I was the fastest emerging artist to break the $1 million mark in my first year. And the reason for that is because at the time, I wasn't really a studios artist. I was really creating site-specific artwork that define the city or the place I was within. And so for me, it wasn't art about me, but it was art about the people. And so that's really why I won. And then I started doing my own studio work, had my very first art exhibit. Typically, the route of the artists is usually go through art fairs, art shows, group shows at a museum, a single show. My first show was at a 10,000 square foot exhibit at the Orlando Museum of Art. That was because of COVID. they had artists. I was going to actually have a small exhibit there, and they had said because of COVID, we had other artists not be able to have work because some museums were open, some weren't. So the work was sort of in transition and stuck in some areas. And so I said, how many galleries you want me to fill? He said 4. I said,
Wow.
I'll fill them all. And so from there, for me, I decided to say I wanted to be the guy that created the next Eiffel Tower, the next Statue of Liberty, the next Arc de Triomphe, the next Bean. The idea of my artwork becomes skylines to cities. And Lake Nona here has been a great test subject. Tavistock Group have been very generous and open to sort of collaborative ideas. And it started with the garage, which is known as the ones and zeros and the beacons. And originally the garage was already designed with precast, very traditional, and they wanted me to put an artwork on there. And I said, or an art piece or sculpture, and I said, there's nothing I can do to hide this ugly garage. I said, give me the skin and the corner of the garage, and it is what it is today, which is the beacon garage with the ones and zeros, a binary code that spell out the missions and goals of Tavistock. You can see it translated, there's words in there. The corner is a stethoscope. If you look in plan view, you can see actually the cord, the 2 planters represent the earpieces. And then if you look in the stethoscope piece, you could see the EKG. That was the EKG when I had a heart attack at the time.
Oh, wow.
And then obviously the dog, which is very famously the community mascot of the community, which originally was going to be a cow.
Oh, is that right?
Yes. It's going to be a giant cow, and Jim Zaboro, who was the project manager or the principal here at the time, wanted to do a dog, and it was a lab, and we thought it was probably more. I wanted to do something that when all these fields go away, what was here before. So the dog actually works well. It's the most selfie thing in the community. On the other corner, we were supposed to, where the Starbucks was, we were supposed to have a cat. So you have cats and dogs. I get in trouble with all the cat owners, but hopefully we can get a cat in here. But then the garage here at the Wave Hotel, which is Braille. So Braille is sort of a tactile, but if you take it in a visual form, the circles there all create letters as well, the same mission words that are on here. If you look at the little holes that glow at night, those are actually spaces. So like if you're playing Scrabble, those in between those spaces are actually words, and then you can actually sort of decode them yourself. And then our third garage, hopefully when that comes online, will be Morse code. So it'll be like dashes and dots, So there's these language garages that become these very white kind of boxes that then when we have these districts can say, hey, where is, this is sort of the sort of the movie district or the other kind of districts, or the hotel district and stuff like that. So they become wayfinding elements, and so that's been my story. I've been a resident of Orlando for about 20 years. And only started working here because of the fact that I was doing a lot of stuff worldwide and overseas. And so my biggest sculpture right now is 28 stories tall, taller than the Statue of Liberty in my homeland, called the Victor. And then next week, June 12th, we'll be launching the world's largest heart, which is in Tradition, Florida. So it's 7 stories tall, like the St. Louis Arch in the form of a heart. You can go in the middle of it, and we'll actually have, I think, 10 to 12 couples that will be out there to renew their vows or actually get married at the heart, and that we were going to get it dedicated then. So. And
all this started after your heart attack.
After all that lechon.
Oh, that's fascinating. Thank you for the background. It's I find it interesting. I did a little bit of reading about you and what you do, and I found it interesting how, and you mentioned it in your introduction, how you take your art as a function of where it's going to go, right? As opposed to the other type of artists who they're just feeling something maybe internal to them, or something that's maybe associated with their past or whatnot, but it's personal. it seems like for you, you're trying to take whatever it is that you're inspired by and actually but put it in a function of the community where it's going to live in. Was that always the case, or did you eventually got to that place with your art?
Well, you have to remember my beginnings was in sort of urban design and planning, so it was really more about context and placemaking. This idea of where we would locate the moments, and now I wanted to do the moments, right? And so these moments are really not necessarily about me, they're about the community. And so the word public art is really about the public. It's actually engaging the public of what kind of art they want there that represents them, you know? So when you see like Jesus Redeemer, you know there's something related to that aspect of the people in Rio de Janeiro, right? Or the Eiffel Tower, you know, or the Statue of Liberty, which was a gift, you know. So I think those are very similar to the processes that I go through to kind of help generate a form that's also not only functional, but becomes iconic and becomes the skyline to the cities.
You have a number of pieces in the sculpture garden here by the Wave Hotel, and you tend to use angles, a lot of angles in those pieces. Is that how you've always done your art, or is, again, something that you kind of transitioned into as you develop your craft?
So when I had my first exhibit here, you can see at the Orlando Museum of Art on screen, that's when I can explore my studio work. It was about, did anyone get to see the show at the Orlando Museum of Art? We had a room, a gallery related to about my journey about immigration. One gallery that related to my issues with heart disease. And then the other gallery that related to public art. And for me, as a public artist, as I said, it's not about me, but the people. And cities are not necessarily created by buildings, but the emotions that are occupying all those buildings. So all these sculptures that you see in the Wave Garden, or these fractal forms with the box heads, was my first studio work. And the fractal, which is the angular things, is really a what you call points of connection. So as a landscape or urban designer planner, the contours were actually originally not curvilinear. They were all triangulated in these tin models that had topographic points. And so the topographic points then just became smooth and curvilinear based on humans actually drawing point to point, right, in a smooth line to do contour and drainage. So for me, I took the basic form of that, which are these angular points, and that becomes the human forms. And the human forms with the box heads, the boxes are really substitutes for buildings. So when you see the names of these sculptures like joy, emotion, love, empowerment, faith that you see in the garden, with the head on the building, those are representative of emotions that I see that make a great city. Because when you put all the box heads on a horizon line, it makes a skyline of a beautiful city of emotions. And then I just continue on that vocabulary as I go to new cities of these different emotions. That's why these emotions are named based, why these sculptures are named based after different emotions.
Very interesting. So you mentioned your homeland, right? So you're from the Philippines?
From the Philippines, yes.
Is that correct?
Philippine American, yes.
Yeah. And did you find yourself, as you go into your creative process, drawing from your homeland as you try to manifest a new piece of art?
Well, it's interesting because as I started getting known here in the U.S., corporations and businesses and people in the Philippines started getting notice of the work I'm doing here. And I only started going back there maybe 10 years ago. And the last time I was there was when I was 2 years old. Okay. So my memory of the Philippines was living in a very, what's the word I could say, not very affluent area where we would take a bath with a tub of water and they call it a tabo, you know. I remember us hunting for goats and pigs and It was very not, it was very like, then your parents move here to find the American dream, right? And so, when I first got asked to go back there, I was like, how are they going to pay me? Are they going to pay me with rice or, I mean, it was very naive. And then I go to the Philippines and it looks like Manhattan, right?
Yeah.
And so my job was then you could see these works here on the screen, was to figure out what it means to be a Filipino again. As a Asian American grown here, raised in the States, I mean, I was trying to fit in. I was actually anti-Asian. I was not anti-Filipino, but anti-Asian. I was actually trying to fit in as much as I can because of the suburban community that my parents raised us all in, and trying to fit in with what was normal there. I was not only the only Filipino in our school. Me, my brother, my sister were the only minorities in our school. And so you were very anti-culture, I guess, of where you're from. And my book that's coming out this year really talks about, it's called Points of Origin, coming back home, and sort of my origin story. So it takes me to this idea where I started rediscovering my roots and where I am, and it led me to creating the Victor, which is a 28-story sculpture that you see here. At the bottom, it's polished mirror stainless, kind of like the bean, so you see your reflection, and as you go up, it goes to perforated metal. And so at about 5 o'clock, you actually can see the sun coming through the middle of the heart. And the arm at the top represents not Manny Pacquiao, our famous boxer, although he's going to be dedicated to this. It represents the global Filipino, the idea that no matter if you're looking for the American dream, the European dream, whatever, when you immigrate, don't forget where you're from, what your roots from, and that there's a beacon for you to come back here to kind of celebrate you, and to take the knowledge that you learned abroad and bring it back home. And so it's interesting because if you go back to the Philippines, I am the guy that's now all these giant sculptures that are 28 stories, 9 stories, 12 stories are all popping up through the cities. And I'm changing the skyline and actually helping bring us back onto the world map.
Does it give you, you've done, when you look at the work that you've done a variety of different sizes, right? So you have these 28-story things, and then you have the dog over here, which is, pretty sizable as well. But you've also done smaller things. What takes you, well, obviously the larger ones are for urban development, right? So that's probably has to do with a particular project or a particular situation in any given city. But do you get different sources of inspiration as a function of whether you're going to do something small versus something larger?
Well, obviously it depends on the site, right? But more or less it's interesting because the traditional artist does things in a very small, compact nature, and then one day get a big sculpture. I kind of reversed that model, and I did the big ones, and then now going small, right? It's interesting because my show at the Orlando Museum of Art was in LA was called XLS, extra large small. So I would take all the large versions and make them small like you see here. And this was at Basel, Paris. You could see the smaller versions that I make. And so it's one of those things where I wanted to also be able to have people be able to touch and have something in their home that was the larger than life but smaller that they can bring to their home. And let art be attainable for everyone. And that's where I'm at. It's kind of a tricky line right now because I don't want to necessarily sell out. I guess I don't know what that word sell out is, right? I want my work to be able to be in everyone's hands, and signing in with a new manager. He's one of the sharks on the Shark Tank, and he's making all these licensing deals for me, and it's great to see like opportunities where my miniatures can be on game boards like Monopoly or something like that. But I'm like, wow, is that too much, or where's that line? Because if my dream is still to one day be in the Louvre or the Met, or sell a balloon like a bunny rabbit, like the same mirror stainless bunny rabbit that's 18 inches tall for that Jeff Koons has sold for $91 million.
Yeah.
How do I still keep that path without feeling that my work is not as exclusive anymore, you know. And art is subjective, as you know, right? In terms of how people feel about it and what people want to buy and purchase it for.
Yeah, no, you just reminded me when you said that you went from large to small. It's like the opposite. You're right. I'm a big fan of Dali, and when you go to St. Petersburg and you see the museum, his first works were actually quite small.
Yeah.
And then he ended up with those giant canvases, right? Do you what role does technology play in the creation of your art? Obviously, you need tools, you know, to build these giant things. But in the world today, I mean, everybody is being impacted by, you know, AI and all the various things that are available to us. Are you using that, or are you more traditional with the way you construct your art?
Well, similar to some architects like Zaha Hadid and Frank Gehry, like the thing is, as a artist, I'm not necessarily there laying brick by brick to make the, you know, the Sphinx or you know, some granular thing. I have a team, right? Obviously, and it's really in the age of where the technology has allowed me to move and bend materials in a way that that is still beautifully aesthetic, but then can stand up to a Category 3 hurricane, right? So, you know, because of the scale of my work, or even if it's smaller, you know, there's always life safety in terms of the things that we do. I mean, the old artists would sit there and weld and weld and weld and say, it's just strong enough, right? I go into a city, and the first thing I get from the building permit is like, what is the wind load calculations for that arm? I'm like, what? You know? So a lot of stuff that I start with is engineering, and then using technologies to kind of figure out. It's interesting, I'm doing a sculpture now for the New Moors Hospital, you'll see here. It's a 40-foot elephant sculpture, kind of like the dog, but an elephant with an umbrella. It was funded by Allen Ginsberg. But we had to calculate the wind load of the umbrella so that it doesn't fall or fly off or, you know, I don't want to be like, hey, have you ever been hurt by sculpture? Morgan and Morgan, you know, we're like in a litigious area that you have to kind of figure out how to protect yourself, right? So, but yeah, using AI in a way for me, I've been using it lately just to actually help generate ideas. Like I'll spit out idea or sketch, and I say, hey, can you create a form or a color pattern that helps match the intentions of what I was looking for, and then still testing back and forth. The only thing that AI does, it makes you do things much more faster. It's because if you can imagine, I think, you know, my book's coming out. It'll be like a 10-year book. You know, I've been doing this for 15 years, and if you see all the amount of work that I've done, I've done a lot, you know, in these last couple of years that if I sat there and 20 years ago and started building the Victor, I'd probably be done now, you know. Whereas the Victor was done in 3 years, you know, and that was during COVID, you know. And so, you know, I think technology, the way that we can, you know, we still do traditional hand forging where we're melting metal and banging it like a Japanese sword and polishing it and grinding it and seam welding everything. But as we go to different things related to even like the projection mapping thing that we did here at the beacon, where you see it projected on the object itself, trying to create algorithms that create patterns and images that reflect kind of the mood or the inspiration that you're trying to do. But yeah, definitely AI is playing. Now, here's an interesting thing. So AI has actually affected me in a way where I might have to call Morgan and Morgan from the fact that they've taken the Victor. When I say they, the Nestle company, a bank, have actually made animations of my sculptures coming alive, you know. And I was like, wait, that's kind of cool, but wait, I'm not getting any royalties from that, you know. And so I finally got a cease and desist, and now another sculpture PR firm came to me, and they said they want to animate it like for a pharmaceutical company, like it's sneezing, you know. But it's cool, and they showed me it, and I was like, wow, they actually could take my sculpture in real form and through AI actually animate it without me giving them the model, like traditionally the way you would do it. But it's
Yeah.
just crazy to kind of see what AI can do. I think the way I was charging them on this, they're like, how much would you charge Tom Cruise? Or what would his fee be to do that? So I think that was a way to figure out how I can start patenting and trademarking my sculpture so that, and that's the beauty of it. When people are seeing, and I see it in commercials, I see it in movies now. There was a filming of Jurassic Park, and they were going to film one of my pieces as part of the background. There was some talk about another Mission Impossible, kind of him. So instead of it going off Burj Khalifa, there's people are now looking at my sculptures as opportunities for engagement within Hollywood as well, which is really exciting.
That's fantastic. Well, best of luck with that. Let me ask you, I once talked to an artist who told me that there's two types of artists, and of course this is his opinion. This was a long time ago. He says there's artists who draw inspiration from role models and other artists that they look up to, and then there's the ones that everything comes from within. Do you agree? And if so, I mean, which side do you, or are you both?
I think there has to be a combination of both. I always believe there's never an original idea. It's just a variation on something that was started a long time ago. And a design is never finished. It's always an evolution of always continuing on to something next and new, right? Mm-hmm. So I think if you have to be inspired by peers, but my peers are not necessarily other artists. They're actually other entrepreneurs. Mm. So I'll look at other architects, interior designers, fashion designers. If you've seen on here, I'm doing a lot of collaboration, so I'm coming out with my own cologne line. They're taking the box head, and that becomes a cap, like you see right here. Mm-hmm. So you can see how, one of my big influences was Virgil Abloh. Mm-hmm. So Virgil, if you don't know, he started, same with me, an architecture school in Chicago. Started this brand called Off-White. Became really close to Kanye. And then evolved, and whoever would think that when you were starting as an architect student, that you would be the lead designer to Louis Vuitton, right? So for me, I love the ideas with the tagline artist that I'm not doing things that are in physical form, but I could play in a space that involves how people live, right? How they dress, what they drive, And so I think that's the beauty of as a creator, is that sometimes you don't have to be put in a box of saying you're an architect and a baker. You could do all those things, right? And so for me, it's being inspired by a lot of other people, but then also having that instinct or that something within that's either personal, related to my heart disease, or something that is just intuitive, right? I think when people ask what my greatest gift is I think I don't need to sit on an idea for 20 days or 30 days. I'll get back to you. I have this sort of ability to come out with things right on the spot. And I think for me, it's always about, when people say, hey, can you make three concepts? Your first concept is always going to be your best concept, right? The other two are just hey, you're just trying to please everybody else, or test ideas that you don't think were going to work, right? And so for me, it's always the idea and then maybe variations on that same idea, as I sort of evolve and look at things.
Elton John said once that he wished he had written Every Breath You Take by Sting, of course, the Police, right? Mm-hmm. And he was very serious about it. He's like, that's the one song I wish I had written, as a songwriter. Have you ever had the experience of seeing a piece of art and think, oh man, I wish I would have done that one?
I always have these, oh man. I don't know if it's, oh man, I wish I did that. I wish I was in that space. I wish my artwork was there, right? Not necessarily that actual form, but I wish I did that, I do have that so it's interesting. I don't know if you follow my work here, but it's like I don't like doing design competitions as much because I've won close to maybe $35 million in design competitions that never got built. One example is the Orlando Terminal C. So every time you go into Terminal C and you see these giant hanging pieces of light, there was a sculpture that I had won and beat out over 100 people about this idea of a journey of a boy that grew up in Orlando and wanted to find dreams here, but made his own dreams. It was a paper airplane that he was throwing. And every time I look up in the ceiling, I'm like, wow, I wish that was there. Because, you know when you go to Singapore and you see the waterfalls, it's like, for me, it's like defining airports through iconic moments. And I think Orlando Airport lost an opportunity for that iconic moment. If you ever seen the competition I won in Jacksonville, it's called, people call it the LERP, the Lex, the Love. It's this $18 million commission that's 151 feet, representing the length of the St. Johns River. It had this idea of an anchor, this idea of an infinity symbol, and the A for love that spelled out Jax, but you can actually see it in different forms, and people interpret it in different ways. And I've never had a sculpture that never got built, but had so much memorabilia from it. There's hats, there's socks, there's miniature versions. 2 people got tattoos of it, and the thing's not even built. I mean, it physically has a tattoo on it. So I think it's, it's great to kind of be able to create artworks that inspire people, right? To do things like that,
Oh, that's wonderful. You just reminded me. I'm from Panama originally, so I was born and raised out there, and I chose to come here to the United States many, many years ago. But you just reminded me that sense of pride, right? Of wanting to design something and then seeing it through. When we had the expansion to our Panama Canal, there was a competition, but the requirement was that the winner of the design couldn't be the builder.
Yeah.
Right, because they wanted to kind of separate the two, right? They wanted a true design, right? But then they wanted someone else to build it. So that's 2 separate contracts, right? And they were interviewing the folks who won. It was a German company who had the design for the new set of locks and whatnot. And for me, it was kind of hard to understand, but they were actually very happy, very proud that it was their design, even though they don't get to build it. Because obviously, for a project like that, the build-out is a lot more money, right, than the actual design itself. Yeah. So, interesting.
Well, actually, side note on that, I won't say the city, but a competition I did win, which was $1 million. They said they didn't have the funding, but a couple of years later, I got some plans saying they're building it. And I'm like, what? And it was actually the builder and the designer that actually were on the selection committee.
Oh, wow. Well, there you go.
That actually took that, thought it was a free design, and tried to do it. So, I think it's interesting that, that as we start shaping cities more than buildings and integrating art and culture, it really helps kind of create the soul for cities, and I think that's the value of public art and why we do it. The Panama Canal, of sort of a historic infrastructure element and making it a piece of art as well, and something like that is another example of how you can create great places and moments.
Indeed. I have a very good friend, old friend. I hope he's watching online. He's a musician. In fact, we went to college together. And I'm going to throw this at you and see if this has happened to you, okay? He was living up in Canada, and he got a phone call that his loving aunt had passed away. And he hung up. He went for a walk. And, he doesn't remember, at least he doesn't remember how long he was on that walk. He thinks it's about, less than an hour. And in that moment, through that walk, a song, the entirety of it, the lyrics, the music, the arrangement, the whole thing just came to him. He got home, He recorded it. He wrote it and then recorded it. He sent to me. What do you think about this? Is that something that has happened to you? I mean, that quick? Is something that just comes to you as a function of an experience?
I think that's the research component of it. It's like as I go in there and I dive into, you know, who originally inhabited these lands, you know? Why does your city have these symbols for your flag? What was here before the city was there? Was it agriculture? What kind of agriculture? And it's really kind of taking the roots that established these things, the memories that helped create what is there now, and creating form for that, you know? So for me, the research component allows me to kind of have these really fast, I don't think I've had something where I read a song or heard something or took gummies or chocolates or something come to me. But no, I think for me, the easiest way to get inspiration is through research. And then I think the talent is figuring out how to create form or ideas for form from that research. That's where I think the creativity or the talent is.
Oh, but that's a beautiful process because through the research you're connecting with, like you said, the people who were there before, right? What was the intent before? How did it evolve, right? And in that, you're actually tapping into the human condition. You're tapping into the environment. You're tapping in, and then that becomes the source of inspiration.
Sure, like everything has memory, right? So maybe as you go into that research, maybe it's something on a very deeper level where I'm connecting with the land, and maybe there's some sort of holistic or spirits or something there that's informing me intuitively, you know? I think we're all guided in some ways, or it's all information, you know? If you start looking deeper into, that's why I love research, you know, to kind of understand that. And maybe I am being guided, you know? And the thing is, like, when I did have that life incident, it made me kind of more focused, you know? I am taking drugs, like 12 pills a day, but for my heart. And maybe that's also doing things to me that's opening up my mind a little bit faster, you know? I think the key of why I've been able to I don't know if it's, I always hate the word using successful, but that I've been able to accomplish things is because I've been able to take ideas, which there's a lot of people can do that, but I've been able to execute. And that's the thing that I think a lot of artists are having a hard time is how to execute things fast and in a way that is done that can become something that becomes timeless, you know? That's kind of not like a one-hit wonder per se, right? So
like we had in the 80s,
Yeah.
a lot of those. So I was very excited to have you in the podcast. And this podcast I started this to inform people and to present people. I'm a technologist, you know, I'm an engineer, and I love science, but I'm also an amateur musician. I play the guitar, I sing, I love the art. And you're my first, artist, you're a...
Well, Filipinos like karaoke. So.
Oh, well, there you go. So you need to come to our next jam session, right? But I, as much of a technologist and lover of science and math and medicine and all these things, I also feel that art is essential for the well-being of a community. I don't know whose quote was this. I should know this, but some long time ago said that a society can be defined by the quality of art it produces, right? And I truly believe that, and I believe that art, we should go from STEM, people are saying that now, from STEM to STEAM, to include that A, because through art, we can communicate in ways that we can't with any of the other tools that we have available to us. Are you on board with that? I mean, do you relate to that, in what you do?
Yeah, I mean, I always feel there's a form of healing through art, right? I think art is non-binary, non-political. I think the reason why I didn't win those, ever accomplish those $35 million worth of work is because I should have asked, if I'm competing, is what term is that mayor or that senator in? Because if they're in their last term, then it's not going to get done. And that's what happens. It's a new mayor or someone would come in and they was like, oh, that wasn't my idea, right? But for me, it's really about this idea that art is democratic, right? It's about freedom of expression. It could be non-political if you want to. I mean, you could. There's a lot of political artists there, and I don't really want to. I say kind of neutral, I guess. But then there's important things that I do that create healing, like that are not competitions that I do pro bono. Like, so for example, the Pulse Memorial, the Pulse Art Tribute. Mm-hmm. I'm not doing the Pulse Memorial downtown, but I'm doing an art tribute in Osceola County, which is 49 angel wings, 49 feet tall, that form into this rainbow, to honor the victims' families and first responders and survivors of that. And the reason for Osceola County is because a lot of the victims' families are from Osceola County. And so to give them a place as an art tribute where the incident didn't happen. Because a lot of folks won't even go downtown ever, but they'll come here. So for me, it's not to recall the days of what happened in that event. It's to honor the people who lost their lives that night. So, and then the other piece is like, in terms of technology, is this amazing opportunity that I'm working on with Richard Branson. It's going to be the world's largest underwater sculpture. It's like 10 stories tall. It's a human figure kneeling on the ground that has his hands coming out that show the 12 elders related to the elders like Nelson Mandela. That's ideas of people who are very, you could see here on the screen, that are very about keeping the world in an protected, from environmental solutions. And the hand comes out 30 feet in the water and becomes like a light tower, so boats will see it and people will scuba dive as you come there. And technology-wise, it's like instead of building it you can't just go sink it, right? We're building it piece by piece. And kind of like when you go to a new house and you see, or a resort, and you see beautiful landscaping, it's small, like, oh, don't worry, I'll look great in 20 years, the landscaping. What we're doing is we're making like the foot or the ankle or the limbs, and then we're hooking low voltage electrodes so that corals can attach to it. And then once it's all attached, then we assemble everything together so that we're not waiting for the structure to have corals attached when we first do it. It's already going to all pre-attach, and this will be a great opportunity to kind of study and share to the world about how art and corals are very important to sustaining water quality.
Where is it going to be?
So Necker Island,
okay.
Between Necker and Mosquito. Necker is the island that he owns down there. So
wonderful, wonderful. Is there a space that you have your eye on? You mentioned spaces, like, I didn't necessarily want to have that art, but I wanted that space. Is there an empty space that you're eyeing on right now?
So you actually hit it. It was interesting because that's why people are billionaires. They ask for a discount all the time. And I said, sure, if you give me 2 seats on Virgin Atlantic. So I could have myself and a spot for not necessarily a companion, but for a sculpture. Okay. So then I would have the first sculpture in space that then could have an art exhibit in space. Then I can auction that and then buy many seats, right?
There you go.
The idea that expanding beyond into another dimension. The interesting about Mr. Branson is air, land, sea, and space, right? So how can I tie in art and culture as we start moving off this planet? And how does art become another layer versus an afterthought, right? As we move into other places we can inhabit.
What is the one project that, other than this, that's pretty exciting, but is there something else that you're really looking forward to doing?
So I do have heart disease, and so it was interesting because my biggest advocacy is the American Heart Association. I had literally was in New York walking the red carpet with Sharon Stone and all these other American heart advocates. And the next day I had a heart incident and went to Advent. They had told me that they did a heart cath and they said, you had triple bypass, but 2 of your bypasses are closed. You had 4 stents and 2 of your stents are closed. And I said, why am I still here? Like, what did you do? Like, you went in there, did you do anything? Like, did you, like, no, we didn't do anything. You know, what happened to you is that we were trying to figure out why blood flow wasn't coming to certain areas by the x-ray. But when we went in there, we realized that your heart was building its own collaterals to go around the blockages itself. It's kind of this idea where the water would come to a dam and would create new tributaries, or if there's traffic, people create their own ways to get around it. So the human body is interesting, and I think for me it's just me continuing to manifest and try to keep the goal in mind of creating these landmarks around the world that help do that. And so the thing back to what I'm looking forward to is my next series of artworks will be based on the heart. Going through that process with the heart cath, with the x-rays, with the echoes, with the sound, is creating an exhibit that shares all those diagrams, sounds, smells of what it means to have heart disease, and creating a show that then will go nationally, sponsored by the American Heart Association, to kind of do something that talks about me. When you're saying something within, it's literally me, so.
That's fantastic. One of the things that I do in this podcast is in addition to try to create awareness, in addition to educate and provide a platform for people to connect with the community. This is about the community. We do this once a month so that people can actually get here to meet you. Hopefully you can stick around for a few minutes and meet the crowd. But it's also to challenge the community, because the community needs to be challenged in order for it to thrive. And we have a beautiful community here. I'm a resident here, you're a resident here, everybody here. And I believe we need more art. What would you say to our community members here in Lake Nona / Orlando as far as what to go out there and do, how to get started, how to find inspiration, like things that have worked for you, so that they can come out and show us what they've got?
Well, I mean, I'll be honest, like Lake Nona has become, and the Tavistock group have become a role model for other communities of how to integrate art within their infrastructure. Every time I've met a client, it's always like, oh, we've seen your work at Lake Nona, or, oh my God, you did the work at Lake Nona, but we've looked at it as a model. And I think it's really, for me, the private sector really is the people who actually can help heal communities. The cities are there, they have too many responsibilities, but it's always the private sector that niches the gaps that the cities can't fill, right? And the private sector will have more time to dedicate to what is really good art versus the city sometimes doing things because they want to just check boxes, right? Or a certain leader or someone in office will want something on his checklist as well, right? As resume builders, right? The private sector doesn't care about any of that. They really are there to serve the community. And Tavistock has Mr. Lewis, Craig Collins, Juan, the people who are here that believe in art and empowered to work with artists is a good way to kind of engage yourself in communities. So if you're an artist, go to communities that value art. Like go to Wynwood, right? Come to Tavistock, right? Or Lake Nona. See how they do it. See how they intentionally do things. Through a curated process. People always see these. Have you seen the A&E fees here? They're hidden, right? And when you eat something, that goes towards. It's a really small percentage. It doesn't go to me, but it goes to the programming and the art that they do here, and and even in making decisions when they build new buildings, that they dedicate that idea of 1% or percentage for art here. So one of the projects I did over here is in the office building across from the dog sculpture. I don't know if anyone's seen it. It's a LEED certified building, which means it's like a green building that relates to environmental. They got a certification. And one of the things was dealing with the stairwell. And we created an art piece in the stairwell. I don't know if you've seen it. It's this fractal finish. It's all based on motion of people using the stairs that change the color as it goes through the day. And there's an actual map on there that says stairs. And you can actually see the number of calories the building has burned every day. So this idea of functional art is part of it. So that's a hidden piece in here. But then also Tavasak's done a great job of incorporating mural artists here that you see everywhere within here, within Pixent, like Pixent, the building we're in, over in Boxy Park. They're just always innovators. And I think you just have to be in a community that really appreciates artists. You can't go somewhere. I mean, you can be a trailblazer if you want to, but it's easier to be in somewhere where you're already accepted and then learn the basics there before you can come and become a maverick.
Excellent. Well, I knew this was going to happen. It always happens. We start talking and then you blink and an hour has gone by. I want to open up and see if anybody has any questions for Jefre. I knew. Glenn, let me hear so I can repeat it to the folks in... So the question is for those online is Glenn, of course, one of our residents here. He's been here for a number of years. Met you at the Wave. He wants to know what was the special sauce that drove you to come here to Lake Nona specifically.
It was a chroma. Just kidding. The great food. No, I mean before I stop, the Disney thing is. When we first started doing the garage here, we wanted to create things here that you didn't have to buy a ticket for. Like, if you think about it, with Universal, Disney, all the theme parks, we should be the most creative city in the whole world and have them all here, right? But people think they're only living behind that gate, and we want to have them come out of the gate and start taking that experience outside to kind of incorporate art in the communities. What made me move to Lake Nona, I mean, ironically, was when I was an urban design and planner, I was actually working on, as an intern, working in the design of the park called Gladding Green, which is behind the YMCA. And it was designed by Gladding Jackson, the firm I worked for when I moved here. And I decided to buy the townhouse there to kind of live on the park that I actually designed. And it worked out fabulously because if I moved here again, I'm on a plane I'm on a plane once every 2-3 times a week, like I'm leaving tomorrow again, right? So the idea of the vicinity of the airport, but the idea, it's interesting because people never want to live by the airport, but the fact that you have these levels of community in terms of education, safety, arts and culture, the things that you would see in the suburbs is really here, still suburbs, but next to an airport, which you don't find. And the fact that you can come here and then get on an airplane in 5 minutes is amazing. So I came here specifically because I designed something here. So
there you go. Any other questions from the crowd? Yes, Austin. So the question is, the process of creating art is a series of different steps. Do you have one of those steps that is the one that you enjoy the most or your favorite?
Cutting the ribbon. No, I enjoy, like I said, the research part of it, but then I love doing still modeling. So I'll still do some clay modeling, computer modeling, clay modeling. Like a lot of these sculptures you see here, the process is we do hand sketches, and then we do 3D computer models, but then we do 3D printed or clay models so that we can get it 3D scanned. And then we make one-to-one foam models. So that 9-story sculpture, there's a giant foot, a giant torso, that then it becomes the armature to hand forge all the metal around it, tack weld it, just so we then label them, and then have like hundreds of thousands of parts in the warehouse. And then we have to build internal structure because that foam is not going to stand up to category 3. Mm-hmm. Build the structure, reattach each piece like an IKEA, seam weld it, and then polish the whole thing. Yeah. But the ribbon cutting is always the best.
Any other questions? Jefre, I am very grateful that you accepted my invitation to come to the podcast. You know, we've met a couple of times in passing. You're always very busy when you're around here. You always have people around wanting to talk to you. So I'm very grateful that you made the time and the opportunity to have this conversation. I think I love your art. You know, when people come over here to visit, I take them to this, to the garden and show them all the stuff that's there. You know, all your stuff. Thank you for making the time, and best of success.
And thank you as well for the platform you give to highlight our community and the very talented people that make how we live and enjoy life today.
Much appreciated. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.